Imagine being told you would live forever, then dying in agony because of it. That is the strange mercy of being Qin Shi Huang. You were born in the year 259 BC in the city of Handan, deep inside the enemy state of Zhao. Your father, Ying Zheng, was a hostage prince of Qin, traded to the court of Zhao to keep the peace between two rival kingdoms. But the wealthy merchant Lu Buwei took him in, threw him a grand banquet, and decided to invest in this quiet, overlooked prince. Through a chain of events you barely understand as a child, your father inherits the future kingship of Qin, and Lu Buwei is rewarded beyond measure. You are conceived, possibly by your father, possibly by the merchant himself. That ambiguity would haunt your bloodline forever. You spend the first 9 years of your life as a hostage child in a foreign country, traded between courts as political collateral. At 9 years old, you are smuggled out of Zhao and finally crossed back into Qin, the homeland of your grandfather, King Zhuangxiang. Your grandfather, the great King Zhuangxiang, takes you in and treats you like the heir he never quite had. Your father is then named crown prince, and within months, the old king dies, and Ying Zheng finally takes the throne himself. But Ying Zheng only rules for 3 days before he himself dies suddenly, leaving the throne to a boy of 13. In 247 BC, you are crowned king of Qin, the most powerful of the 7 warring states, at 13 years old. Lu Buwei, the merchant, rules as your regent, and for nearly a decade, the empire is run by men you do not fully trust. Behind the scenes, a former lover of the queen mother has been smuggled into the palace, disguised as a eunuch, a man called Lao Ai. Lao Ai and the queen mother have 2 secret sons together, and they begin to plot replacing you with one of those infants as a puppet king. In 238 BC, Lao Ai stages a coup using the seal of the queen mother to mobilize troops, betting that the king is too young to fight back. You, at 22, personally lead the loyal troops, crush the rebellion, and have Lao Ai executed by being torn apart at the waist. His 2 infant sons are killed, the queen mother is stripped of every title, and you make it clear that any future plotting ends the same way. Lu Buwei is exiled for his role in covering up the affair, and within 2 years, he drinks poison and dies far from the capital. By the age of 22, you are, finally, fully, completely, the sole ruler of Qin. In 230 BC, you set in motion the most ambitious military campaign in human history, the conquest of every other kingdom on the continent. For 3 centuries, the land had been split into 7 warring states, each refusing to bend to the others. You begin with Han, the smallest and weakest, in 230 BC, and within a year, the Han king is captured and his kingdom absorbed. In 228 BC, your general Wang Ben breaks the Zhao state and captures its king, despite Zhao's desperate final stand. Wei falls the next year, its king surrendering without a fight when he sees the size of the Qin host. Chu, the largest and most populous, falls in 223 BC after a year-long campaign that ends with its capital in flames. Yin, after a famous failed assassination attempt against you in 227 BC, surrenders the following year. Its crown prince is executed. And finally, in 221 BC, the last kingdom, Qi, surrenders without a battle after being surrounded on all sides. For the first time in recorded history, all of the Chinese civilization is under one crown, one language, one ruler. You stand in the Great Hall of Xianyang and declare a new title for yourself, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. Chancellor Li Si coins a new word for the title, a word that will be used by every Chinese dynasty for the next 2,000 years. You begin the most ambitious standardization project the world has ever seen, starting with weights, measures, and currency. The round bronze coin with a square hole becomes the universal currency, and every region of the empire adopts it within a year. You order Li Si to design a single written script, replacing dozens of incompatible local systems across the empire. Even the width of cart axles is standardized, so that any cart can use any road, any ruts cut anywhere in the empire. You build 18,000 kilometers of imperial roads, plus the Ling Canal linking the Yangtze and Pearl River system for grain transport. In the north, your general Meng Tian leads 100,000 soldiers and 1 million conscripted laborers to link the old rival walls into one continuous line. Meng Tian drives the Xiongnu nomads 1,000 li north of the Yellow River, securing the frontier for a generation. The wall stretches across deserts, mountains, and valleys, and historians later estimate that 1 worker died for every meter of finished rampart. The cost in human life was staggering, but the wall would become the most iconic structure in human history. Back in the capital, you commission the Apang Palace, a vast new imperial complex said to have held 100,000 retainers. And at Mount Li, just outside the capital, you begin work on your own tomb, an entire underground city to follow you into the afterlife. But you're now over 40 years old, the wars are done, and the more you think, the more suspicious you become. Some scholars begin to compare you unfavorably to the old sage kings, murmuring that your rule is too harsh and too short. A scholar named Qin Shi submits a memorial urging you to share power and behave more like the ancient sage kings. In 213 BC, you do not share power. Instead, you issue the order that would define your reign for centuries to come. Li Si drafts the order, and you sign it, demanding that every book in the empire, except technical manuals, be delivered to the flames. Across every province, libraries are reduced to ash, scrolls are confiscated and burned, and scholars who refuse to comply are arrested. Many of the great classics survive only because scholars hide them in walls, in caves, and in memory, reciting the words to the next generation in secret. But the book burning is not enough. The next year, in 212 BC, you take the purge a step further. Around 460 scholars are rounded up and buried alive in a single mass grave outside the capital. They are accused of subversion, of refusing to surrender their books, of criticizing the new order in private letters. The court goes silent, and for the rest of your reign, no scholar dares raise a voice in public. The man who unified China has just made sure that no one alive can write down what he is doing wrong. And now your obsession turns, not to books, not to the living, but to your own death. Alchemists called Fengshi tell you the elixir of immortality is hidden on the island of Penglai, far out in the eastern sea. You send the alchemist Su Fu with thousands of young men, vast stores of grain, and ships loaded with treasure east toward the sunrise. Su Fu returns a message. A great sea creature is blocking the way, and you must send tribute before the elixir can be reached. You send more treasure, then more men, then more treasure, and Su Fu keeps inventing new obstacles, year after year. The elixir never arrives, and you begin to suspect that the alchemists themselves do not believe what they are selling. And so, while the immortality quests fail, your obsession turns inward, toward the death that you know is coming. At Mount Li, you order a clay army to be built, 8,000 soldiers, each with a face of their own, to guard you in the afterlife. The workers come from every province, mixing local clays, sculpting in long rows, and firing the figures in giant kilns near the tomb. Historians now believe the faces were modeled on real soldiers in your actual army, then disassembled and buried in carefully numbered pieces. Pit 1 alone holds over 6,000 warriors, plus horses, chariots, and a baggage train of clay weapons, the largest clay army in human history. Across all three pits, archaeologists would later count more than 8,000 individual soldiers, and not one of them is identical to another. The tomb itself is said to contain rivers of flowing mercury, mechanical rivers that move on hidden bronze currents, and a ceiling studded with pearls to represent the stars. A bronze map of the empire is laid out on the floor, with the Yangtze and the Yellow River as channels of liquid mercury, set in motion by hidden machinery. The whole complex is designed to operate without you, forever, an empire of the dead serving an empire of the living above. The wall is not enough, the army is not enough, the mercury rivers are not enough. You are still afraid, deeply afraid. You begin your 5th imperial tour, sailing up the eastern coast, climbing sacred mountains, and writing inscriptions on cliffs to remind the world you exist. You have stone monuments raised at every peak, declaring that your dynasty will last 10,000 generations and that you have unified the realm under heaven. During one of these tours, a meteor falls from the sky, and you have the entire town near its landing searched for whoever wished you dead. The paranoia is real now. Every falling star, every whispered word, every shadow on the road is a threat. On your 7th and final tour, you sail east toward the legendary islands of the immortals, hoping the journey itself might heal you. On the Sandalwood Beach in the south, you fall seriously ill, and the alchemists are summoned one last time. The alchemists present a new formula, pills made from cinnabar, a bright red mercury, or mixed with honey and ground into a sweet paste. They tell you the mercury will purify your body and grant you immortality, and you, desperate, swallow the pills. The pills taste sweet, and the alchemists promise that you will be young forever. But mercury is a slow, brutal poison that destroys the body from the inside. Within weeks, you can barely speak, your hands begin to tremble, your skin turns gray, and you can no longer keep food down. The man who unified China cannot lift his head, cannot sign his own decrees, cannot even recognize his own sons. In the summer of 210 BC, you die on the road home. At 49 years old, far from the capital, with no heir ready to take your place. Your body is placed in a sealed cart, and 100 officials are sworn to absolute silence about your death. Your chief eunuch Zhao Gao and your chancellor Li Si forge a letter in your name, ordering your eldest son Fusu to commit suicide at the frontier. Fusu, your chosen heir, obeys, and the throne passes instead to your youngest son, a boy of 20 named Hu Hai, easy for the eunuch to control. Zhao Gao pulls every string behind the new emperor Hu Hai, and within months, the dynasty you built is already rotting from the inside. In 209 BC, just a year after your death, the first great peasant rebellion breaks out in the empire you forged. By 207 BC, the Qin capital Xianyang has fallen to rebel forces, and the short-lived dynasty has only a few months left to live. Your empire, the first unified China, lasted only 15 years after you. But the seed you planted would last 2,000 more. 2,164 years later, in the spring of 1974, 3 farmers in Shaanxi province dig a well. Their shovel hits something hard, and they pull a life-size clay head out of the earth. A face with real features, real eyes, real expression. News spreads, archaeologists arrive, and pit number 1 is open for the first time in more than 2 millennia. Row after row of life-sized warriors emerges from the red clay. Every face different, every uniform precise, every detail down to the tread on the sole of a clay sandal. The faces are the most human part of the discovery. Every expression, every hairstyle, every scar suggesting a real person who once served the emperor. Today, the warriors stand in 3 great pits and a museum, ranked in formation, frozen mid-march for an emperor who would never see them again. 8,000 clay men, waiting in the dark for a master who never came, a funeral that never happened, an afterlife that never opened its doors. The great tomb itself remains sealed. Modern probes have measured dangerously high levels of mercury in the surrounding soil. The curse of the cinnabar, as some call it, has kept your tomb closed for over 2,000 years. Perhaps it always will. You unified a continent, standardized a civilization, built the wall that defined a nation, and yet died in agony, betrayed by the very medicine you trusted most. Your dynasty promised 10,000 generations and lasted 15 years, but the name you created, China, has lasted 22 centuries. The title emperor, the writing system, the road network, the Great Wall. The bones of China are still the bones you laid. Even now, 1,000 miles from where the empire rose, school children learn characters that you once ordered carved into the bones of a scholar's protest. And that is the strange mercy of being Qin Shi Huang, the man who killed himself with the cure for death. If you were Qin Shi Huang, you would have done all of it, the unification, the terror, the wall, the army, the mercury, and you would have died the same way. And somewhere, 2,000 years from now, a child in a school uniform will be asked to write your name in the same script you standardized. Along the road you built, beneath the wall you raised, the empire you imagined will go on, just under a different name.